morning, dignitaries, changemakers, and youth from around the world. We're so excited to have you here today as we talk about climate education and the opportunities it presents to teach children around the world about nature. Oh, you can't hear it? It is pressed. Okay, start again. Can you hear me? No? Hello? Hello, hello, hello? Hello? Oh, there we go. Good morning, dignitaries, changemakers, and youth from around the world. We're so excited to have you here today as we talk about climate education and the opportunities it presents to change how we teach children around the world about nature. My name is Coralie Youssef, and I'm a 15-year-old French woman who has grown up my whole life in Australia. This conversation is important to me because as a child, I'm scared of the world that we're going to inherit, having been tasked with finding the solution to a problem generated by others that we quite frankly don't understand. Thank you for joining us today, and I'm now going to turn this over to our wonderful program lead, Sarah.
Thank you. As the Executive Director for the Center for Global Education, I'm thrilled to welcome you all to today's panel focused on climate education. The urgency of the climate crisis demands not only action, but informed, collaborative dialogue. We have gathered an exceptional group of experts, each bringing unique experiences and perspectives from diverse geographic locations. Their insights into climate education initiatives implemented by multilateral and community organizations will be invaluable as we explore effective strategies for building at-scale, impactful programs. I'm particularly excited about the inclusion of children and youth voice today. Young people are not just the leaders of tomorrow, they are the change makers of today, and they demand that we act decisively and inclusively. Thank you for joining this critical conversation as we work towards building a sustainable future for all. I'm going to turn it now over to our amazing change makers.
Namaskaram. I'm Grishma from the enchanting and riveting country of India. We are here representing #Decarbonize, a program organized and hosted by the Center for Global Education. Decarbonize uses virtual technology to bring together the voices and lived experiences of children ages 5 to 18, centering them in digital climate learning to increase empathy, perspective taking, belonging, and action. Decarbonize is the world's largest multilingual school-based program on climate education, advocacy, art, and action. Through the lens of global citizenship, we connect over 6 continents, 75 plus countries, hundreds of schools, and more than 10,000 students.
G'day, my name is Riley, and I'm a 15-year-old student from Australia. Throughout the Decarbonise cycle this year, we were able to engage in many virtual meetings where we were partnered with a school from a different continent to teach them about our country and the specific climate issues that we are facing. We have a virtual classroom with project-based learning modules aimed at improving our critical thinking skills and helping us develop understanding of the global climate issues from multiple different perspectives. We are also able to engage in climate policies through art projects and science fairs. And all of these months of work really helping us to develop our community action projects to make meaningful impacts on specific climate issues.
Hello, my name is Peyton. I'm 16 years old. I'm an Indigenous student from Canada, and I'm Dene from Treaty 6 territory. After engaging in months of online collaboration and learning, we met over a 48-hour weekend to write our annual Global Climate Manifesto. The first step of this manifesto was to create a survey. We shared the survey within our schools and collect children's idea about climate change action happening in their countries. At the time of writing our paper, we had over 800 responses from 32 different countries. Today we will be presenting the manifesto with all our ideas from all the students from every continent and hearing how our ideas for climate action and it connects us all and our voices for change.
Hello everyone, my name is Teoman Mustafayev. I am 15 years old from Baku, Azerbaijan. About the manifesto, as previously mentioned, this was a group project with tens of thousands of students who all worked together to brainstorm a bunch of ideas and create 13 key statements, which we have all included in our paper, which are the changes that we see fit that need to be made in order to help battle climate change. And it's extremely important to note that all these ideas that we have created and all these statements are all purely our ideas. We didn't get any help from any external adults or anyone else or any big companies. It was all our ideas and what we believe needed to be changed in order to help out climate change.
Now, I would like to talk about the 4 priority areas the manifesto focuses on. Firstly, government policies. I see my classmates share videos about the climate crisis. But when I ask them what my country is doing about it or what they could do about it, most of them do not know. While we learn about complex mathematics and science in school, we barely discuss what we, as the inheritors of this planet, should do about the biggest challenge that we are facing in this era. And this is what hurts me the most, the lack of climate education and awareness among young people. And this is what fuels the ignorance of urgent action required for climate change mitigation. I'm told I'm too young to participate in climate discussions, but I'm not too young to suffer from climate impacts. I'm told to focus on my studies, but what good are grades in a world that is burning? So today, I'm not asking. I'm demanding on behalf of the 10,000 students that work together to create this manifesto. Our first demand is simple. Include and fund commitments to climate education in nationally determined contributions. I'm tired about learning about photosynthesis in school while watching the green spaces in my city disappear. Our second demand is non-negotiable. Give children a real voice in climate policies. We urge governments to create proper platforms where children can take part in climate policy discussions. Our last and final demand is the most crucial of all. Make climate policies understandable to everybody. Simplify the scientific jargon in climate policies. We need policies we can understand and climate education that we can use, not tomorrow, not after a decade, but right now. Climate change and climate action is not just for experts. It's for every person who drinks water, breathes air, and hopes for a better tomorrow. I'm young, but I'm not blind. I'm scared, but I'm not silent. And I'm done watching my future slip away because climate education isn't a priority and policies are written for experts, not for people like me who will actually live with their consequences. I refuse to inherit a broken planet just because we could not make climate policies in education accessible to everyone who needs to understand them.
I remember being told about the wonders of the Australian Great Barrier Reef by my parents when I was younger, and how the vibrant coral reefs provided homes for teeming schools of fish and formed the foundations for diverse ecosystems of native flora and fauna. When I was given the opportunity to visit these reefs, I was ecstatic. But upon seeing the coral bleaching and the loss of biodiversity, it was quite frankly disgusting. This is what opened my eyes to the climate crisis and what encouraged me to pursue my climate education. But in my search, I was once again met with disappointment. In Australia, climate education is limited, and most of the information that we are provided with is through social media and the news, and is full of useless buzzwords and statistics that we quite frankly don't understand. This is why organizations such as the Centre for Global Education, who we are here with today, and their decarbonised programs are vital for the youth, as we are doing children a massive justice all around the world. We're including tens of thousands of students from over 70 countries to come together and collaborate on a youth manifesto, which is what we're here speaking about today. For me, the most emotive part of the youth manifesto is climate education, as it is such an important step to take in order to avoid another generation of complacent and disinterested children. I see it in my schools, and I see it in the youth in my community. The kids just plainly don't care. And this is why we need these demands, which I would now like to share with you. We push for hands-on and experimental learning opportunities to be incorporated into climate education in all year levels. This will allow us to engage with environmental problems directly, leading to a deeper understanding of these issues and the actions needed to solve them. We demand that climate education be integrated across all subjects to foster a holistic understanding of the environmental challenges. This interdisciplinary approach will allow us to see climate issues from multiple different angles and how they intersect across areas that are not just science. We advocate for establishing emotional connections to the climate crisis through art and storytelling, to foster a deeper appreciation for the preservation of biodiversity. Empathy for nature in climate education helps us to understand the values of the environment, inspiring us to act. And finally, we propose that schools capitalize on technology-based multimedia learning schools that children are already familiar with. Adopting technology in the classroom will have a great impact on students' understanding of climate change. These demands really represent what us as the youth and children want, and my advice to any youth here with us today is while the future starts with us, we need to seize the present.
As an Indigenous person, Indigenous communities experience effects through loss of food sources and practices. The traditional food eaten by Indigenous peoples was caribou, but the caribou no longer migrate to Birch Narrows, which was my home territory. Our food sources are at risk, but our children will not know what has been lost unless they are educated on it. We request that communities play an active role in educating young people about sustainable practices through hands-on projects. Children need to understand migration patterns and the immediate effects to everyone on their food sources. Bison is another traditional animal to First Nations people. I take part in teaching children to understand bison migration on the land. Land-based learning needs to be mandatory so that students are connected to the land they live on. A way I teach these children about this is we play a game where it's like tag, but there's only so many bison and so many hunters. But there's like almost double the amount of hunters than there are bison because that's how it really is since bison are going extinct. And we teach them this because it teaches them that they need to be changing and be more aware of what is happening around them. We advocate for children's voices in climate initiatives through mentorship and interactive learning workshops. Including children's voices in decision-making offers new perspectives and ideas. Including us in these decisions also gives us leadership skills and responsibility and makes us feel empowered to collaborate. Many times they say they want to hear our voices, but they don't actually incorporate our ideas into the government policies. So then we don't want to collaborate anymore. We call for the interrogation of Indigenous perspectives and traditional ecological knowledge into climate education. If you cannot see Indigenous voices in the solution, is it really a solution? Extreme weather events have resulted in temporary and long-term evacuations from traditional territories. Climate change threatens First Nations, and my voice is the only one you see here. Where are the voices of the people most affected? Where are the NDCs that show First Nations voice? Elders, knowledge keepers, and community members state that climate change is the result of an imbalance. Not only an imbalance of our ecosystem, but an imbalance of our social values. Look around at who is here and who is not here. We continue to not find imbalance. The legacy of colonization means Indigenous voice is silenced. I will not be silenced anymore.
I remember as a child just driving through the cities and different parts of the country where we would have to always roll up our windows, try to block any air from coming in because of how polluted everything was due to all of the oil rigs, due to all of the factories. And this really affected me as a child. And these places are used to be referred to as like the black parts of the city, the parts that were really bad and really harmful for people. But now these same parts are also known as the best parts of the city. An example would be the Baku White City project. We turned a place that was completely covered in industrial buildings into one of the best places ever, which now looks like a sanctuary. And this honestly created a passion in my heart, and this showed me that making a change and converting bad, poor places into some of the best places in the world is actually possible. And this sparked a passion within me, which is how I ended up here. I did everything I could. I went up to my school director. I asked every adult I knew what I could do to make a change. And this helped me create the manifesto along with the tens of thousands of other children. And this just shows how important it is for us to communicate in order to actually make a change. This comes to the 3 points that we have in the manifesto. The first point is we urge the immediate demystification of scientific information pertaining to climate change to empower and inform the public about the urgent need for climate action. This shows how important awareness is. If more people are aware, if more people know what is going on, this will automatically spark new changes and will help us with our goal of saving the planet. Secondly, we push for collaboration between the scientific community, students, and communities to broaden perspectives and create feasible plans. Every certain aspect has their own benefits and their own strengths. Scientists have all the data. Students, we have voices and we have passion and we experience these days and we go through our lives experiencing all these climate issues. So with proper collaboration and with proper communication, in unison, we can create a change in the world. And lastly, we call for strategic use of popular social media platforms such as TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube to create short, engaging videos that make climate facts accessible and relatable to young audiences. Making use of these opportunities and appealing to the younger generation is extremely important, not only for creating awareness, but also for helping future generations to start caring about the environment and picking up plastic when they are also adults and they have their own children who they are teaching to. So this brings us to our conclusion, and I really believe that although we may be young children who are still learning about life and how the world works, but our voices are still important. We have all flown from different parts of the world, from 6 continents for a reason, and that reason is because we believe that our voices are extremely important. And without our help, and without your help, and without the world's collaboration, we can't make a change. So we call for the world's help and we call for unison. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us today. So as we move into our next activity, and we come to a panel conversation with some experts and another youth, I want to thank you, but we're going to do a little in that spirit of dialogue and not just a panel speaking at the audience. We're going to start a Menti. I don't know if we can use this computer on the screen at the back there. Are you able to put this one up? Perfect. And so it'll show a QR code here. If you just wanted to scan it with your phone, everyone can participate in our conversation. Not sure. It's on my screen. You want to? Thanks so much. Boom. Amazing. All right. There we go. All right. This is why I have youth. So if you guys wanted to go down, and then we'll have everyone, the new panel, come up and join us. And then as we're doing that, let's answer some Menti questions. Don't worry, the QR code will come back up if you missed it after this one. So would you like to read it?
What motivates you to advocate for climate education?
And so as you think of your answer and why you are interested in climate education and advocate for climate education, what fuels that passion? A little bit longer? All right, let's go back. Here we go. Yeah, if your camera's not catching the code, just feel free to enter that 8265-7285 at menti.com. Is it working? I see some no's, I see some yeses. Let's see. Did it come up on your screen now? Awesome. All right, so we have some personal connection to nature, desire to secure a sustainable future for future generations. Oh, it's moving around. Wonderful. And I did this one as a scale because there isn't obviously just one motivation. It's not that we are only fueled by one sort of passion. We find that climate education is it's not a silo, right? It's throughout all of our daily living and our working in our fields. And so having one motivation isn't really the reason that we're involved in this work. But I do love the sustainable future for future generations. And so how are we centering that? How are we centering future generations that are today and not just tomorrow? All right, so I'm going to put the Menti just in case you're new and join the room. And on to the next question. Which of the following do you think is the most effective way to teach about climate change? All right. Field trips, natural sites. I know the hands-on learning was what the students called for in their paper. That the idea of you can't care about nature if you aren't in nature. Community projects, amazing. And I hope we get to hear more about some of these activities in the next panel that's coming up, and the activities that each of these organizations are doing. But as you see, it's not just about learning. It's not just about hearing anymore. It's about hands-on activities. It's about really embedding yourself within nature to learn about nature.
So the next question is, which age group do you believe should be prioritized in climate education? There's a saying that we never stop learning, and I think that that's really important in this. But there's obviously some groups that different people believe that it's more important. So a lot of people are saying at the moment it's about 31 to 65 years old.
I like to see that the early childhood is also important because it's establishing those habits young, right? That this is just a part of how you learn and the way that you learn. And I like that no one has left seniors out of it. I'll be there someday. Wonderful. If the next group wants to start coming up and settling. Okay. All right. And what is the biggest barrier that you think exists, for effective climate education? Right. Lack of funding, always a big one. Insufficient training for educators. And not just in terms of training, but also the capacity for training. I mean, I'm a teacher by trade, as I know Bryce was a teacher in his initial career. And, it's not just the training itself, it's the capacity for teachers to take that training. Low public interest, inconsistent curriculum. And I mean, you heard that in the students' call for it to be in the indices. And how do we make this just something that is global and that is established? The frameworks are established within our systems. Well, thank you so much for participating. I'm going to turn it over to our friend and colleague Bryce Kuhn from Earth Day, and on to the rest of the event.
See, nobody wants to sit by me, but that's okay. All right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming to our panel. My name is Bryce Kuhn, and I'm the Director of Education with EarthDay.org. And my work is focused on climate education, so I'm really excited to be here talking about climate education as a solution. And as Sarah mentioned, my previous career, I was a teacher, so I really like thinking about these connections to youth and hearing the youth voice. So I hope you've enjoyed the session so far. I think it's really important that we had that youth perspective. It's grounding this conversation. And, whenever I talk with young people or I spend time in nature, those are the things that remind me of why we do this work. Because sometimes in an event like this, we're in sessions to sessions to sessions, and it's nice to have those meaningful reminders. So thank you to the previous portion of that. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our panel. First, will be joining us virtually in just a moment is Byun, who is the team leader for the Greening Education Partnership through UNESCO. We have Renata Marish, who is a branch manager for Climate Reality based in Brazil. And we have Cinderella Ndlovu, the executive director of the Green Hut Trust. And we have Janina Guevara Flores, who is another youth representative of the Center for Global Education, CGE. So to structure this, what we're going to do is we're going to have each panelist provide a little bit of background on their work before we get into the questions, asking the panelists questions, and then if we have time, we'd love to hear from the audience. So as they're presenting, just think if there's anything that you'd like to learn more about or ask them about at the end of the session. So I think Cinderella, if we could, we'll start with you, and that was the PDF PowerPoint. If you could switch to that.
Hello, everyone. Okay, while the slides come, I'll just go on with my presentation. My name is Cinderella Ndlovu. I'm from Zimbabwe. I am the founder of a youth-led environmental nonprofit organization called Green Hut Trust. So next slide, please. Green Hut Trust is based in Bulawayo, Zimbabwe. Like I already said, it's a youth-led nonprofit organization, and our mission is to inspire and promote environmental consciousness, proactivity, and sustainable development in communities across Zimbabwe. And our vision is to see a community that is climate literate, resilient, and proactive in terms of solving endemic environmental and climate change challenges. So for our thematic areas, we have biodiversity conservation, we have biodiversity conservation, we have waste management, sustainability, climate education, and climate solutions. Next slide, please. So the power of climate education. I remember when I was doing my undergraduate studies in university, where I was majoring in environmental science, one of the modules that I was expected to excel in was in forestry management. And to my surprise, I was terrible at that module. I could not identify any of the trees. And this is because in my upbringing, I have always resided in an urban area and I've never been exposed to forests, to indigenous trees. So that's why I was struggling at school with this module on forestry. So when I started my organization, I was on a mission to ensure that some of the young students get to understand more about the local trees in Zimbabwe, the indigenous trees. And on the slides, you can see on the first picture, these are students that planted trees in 2021. And on the second picture, these are the very same students with the trees that they planted in 2021. Because of the climate education programs that we did with the school, the students were able to look after the trees and to nurture them. That's why they are grown like that. Next slide, please. So climate education, again, is now a vehicle. It's now a vehicle that we're utilizing as an organization to ensure that we are bridging the intergenerational knowledge that needs to be transferred. On the slides, you can see some of the trees, our tree nursery that we are running, and you can see some of the young people that are planting these trees in their schools. Climate education has also been a vehicle that we are using to also have young people be in touch with nature, taking them to field visits like the survey was saying that we just took, taking them to some of the, exposing them to some of the first-hand impacts of climate change. On the slides, you can see some young people standing there in a dry area that is supposed to be a dam full of water in my city. So these young people are witnessing through a climate education program the real impacts of climate change if you can stand inside of a dam that is supposed to have water. So in Zimbabwe, we have a majority of our population, 62% of our population being young people below the age of 24. So at the end of the day, you find that we have a lot of young people that are looking for jobs. And our organization is looking into capacitating young people to build their green skills. We are also ensuring that we are also capacitating them to come up with innovations, be it in agriculture, in farming, in waste management, so that they can also gain meaningful livelihoods as well. We are also bringing together young people, especially students, to ensure that the education that they're receiving, be it in universities or high school, is not just based on what the books say, but they also get the opportunity to engage with other young people to come up with innovations that we can then be able to assist them to scale up and to make meaningful impact in the community. So in summary, that is what we are doing at Green Heart Trust in Zimbabwe. Feel free to scan our QR code to visit the website and to learn more about our institution. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that, Cinderella. It was great to see those pictures illustrating climate education in action. Thank you. Next, I would like to switch to our virtual participant, Juan from GEP. If in the back, if you guys could switch us.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon. Do you hear me?
Juan, we can't hear you yet, but I'm sure we will soon.
Okay.
All right, we can hear you now.
Brilliant. Okay. Thank you very much, Bryce, and good morning from Paris. It's a little bit snowing here, so very nice to be connected to Baku virtually. My name is Byun, and I'm the team lead for the Greening Education Partnership. So to start with my intervention, I'm sharing my screen just to kick off. The work that we do at UNESCO, because I sit in the section of Education for Sustainable Development at UNESCO, we serve as the secretariat of this global partnership called Greening Education Partnership. And our job here is to make sure that the amazing works like what Cinderella just presented is being facilitated and supported with a global enabling environment on climate change education. So this Greening Education Partnership was born at the UN Transforming Education Summit back in 2022. In order that we facilitate synergies and collaboration around climate change education, particularly around these 4 pillars of action: greening schools, greening curriculum, greening teacher training and education systems capacities, and greening communities. So as many of you may be already aware and already part of this community, we now have actually 95 member states with 2 new countries just joining yesterday, and over 1,400 organizations that are part of this global community. And this community is really co-led, while UNESCO serves as a secretariat, it's really co-led by different organizations. As you can see, the 4 working groups led by 3 different co-coordinators with over 11 UN agencies involved, international organizations, youth, civil society, and foundation. And of course, the host of today's event, Earth Day, is one of our very big and active members of the Greening Education Partnership. And the efforts of this partnership is focused around these 4 areas at the moment. So after building upon the first year of establishing the partnership, the current work in setting the global environment to enable quality climate education is now focused around 2 areas. First is to set the global standard, and second, to set the target by 2030. Setting the global standard is very important because all of these different actors working on this field of climate education oftentimes have different definition of what quality climate education means. And particularly at the beginning of this journey, when we started to talk to different ministries of environment or education in different countries and ask them, do you have climate change education in your country? Almost all of them would say, yes, we do. Because for many, and still is, the concept of climate education means that there is something about how greenhouse effect takes place somewhere in their science curriculum. But what we are trying to define right now is much broader than that, especially the call from the young people today calls for not only the environmental understanding of climate science, but also the social and economic aspects. For example, this green skills and jobs that we'll be talking about here today, as well as climate justice and building resilience against eco-anxiety. So we need to have this full breadth of climate education, and that's why global standard setting is so critical, so that we are all on the same page before we move on to the next steps of actions in our respective countries and areas. So for greening schools, we have now the Green School Quality Standard, which was launched this summer, which sets the key activities that define a green school that is climate ready. And the target for this is to have at least half of the schools in each country aligned with this Green School Standard by 2030. And you can pick and choose from the activities here listed and take at least 1/3 of the activities provided to become a green school. Second is on greening curriculum. So what do we teach from age 5-year-old to 18 plus? And this is to define what are the learning outcomes that are necessary for each of the age groups around environmental, social, and economic aspects of climate change. And here the target is doubling the number of countries that has climate change in their national curriculum by 2030. And for pillar 3 and 4, there's an ongoing consultation at COP29 to develop this green global standard. So please scan these QR codes to join in and share your views on this initial drafts of this greening teacher training guidance and also greening communities guidance to help set the global standard to ensure that all countries have a professional teaching standard that include climate change, and all cities have lifelong learning on climate education. So with this overview, this is a brief presentation of the global overview that I have, but more information can be found also on the website, including for those of you who are interested in joining the partnership, how to join this amazing community of practice. So this is all from me for the moment, and thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Juan. Always really impressive to hear what the Greening Education Partnership is doing and all the partners you have. And congratulations on some more member states. And not sure if you could see in the audience here, but I saw people scanning the QR code. So that's exciting to hopefully bring some more people into this partnership. Okay, next we will get some background from Renata Marish, who is a branch manager, Climate Reality, based in Brazil. Oh, I'm sorry. If you could, in the back, if you could go to 2 more slides on this one. One more. Perfect. Thank you.
Hello, good morning, everyone. I'm Renata. I'm from Brazil, and I'm the head of the Climate Reality Project in Brazil for 9 years now. And when I started, we seems very clear that we have to go to the schools. It seems like very clear that schools hold not the present, but schools hold the future. And we start to talk to teachers, we start to talk to principals, we start to talk to anyone in schools, at the bathroom, at the restaurants, at the schools, and people who did the cleaning. So everyone was important in the schools. We start to talk with the parents, the grandmothers and grandfathers of the children. And seems to me at the moment we are talking to 2015, very near the Paris Agreement. And looks very clear for me that people haven't a clue what was going on at the time. Of course, people know about the rain, people know about the hot, people understand all of things, but people somehow doesn't link these things that were going at their lives with climate change. So the first things that we start to do, it was with games in the schools, not created by us, but created by children. So children create their games for themselves to play with other students. This started very easy, in an easy way, but after that, kids start complaining with us that, okay, we know something about climate change, but our teachers not, our parents not, in our communities not. So we start to understand that we not. It's very easy to talk to children and the youth to teach them, but it's not so easy have the teacher in classroom. Our mayors and our principals doesn't like when we take off the teachers from the classroom and put in another one just to talk what's going on, just to create plans for their lectures. So we start to have a conversation with our Secretary of Education in Rio de Janeiro, and doesn't happen anything. So we start to claim and ask for youth that was at the time asking and demanding for climate Fridays for future. So we went to all the manifest that was going on at the streets and start to asking them, okay, you are asking, demanding for climate change here in the streets, but what's climate change? It's happening in your school. In Brazil, we said like, kri, 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 because nothing happened there. And so we start to make plans with youth to raise their voices. So we made our first manifesto. Lua is here. At the time, he was 16, and Lua had the privilege to fly to Glasgow and make mayors and other adults knows about his manifesto with other kids. After that, we create like a training for how youth can demand, in our case, policy in laws for climate education. We have some success in some states and cities of Brazil, but of course, Brazil is too big, 27 states. So it's a long way to go, but they know for sure how to do that. And after that, we create something to go to the territories, because we understand that it's in the territory that changes are made. So we talk a lot about climate change here at COP, but it will be in the territory that this change will happen. So it's very important. People in their territories know how to demand. So schools have a big impact on that. So we, as you can see at these few pictures, that we try to go in everywhere to talk about climate change, but not with our voices, but with youth voices, with teachers' voices, with indigenous people voices, with quilombolas voices. So it's very important to be gathering with all these persons to trying to understand that we don't know everything, and we are very few at least. And for me, mostly I hear the voice of the youth here at the beginning of the time. And to be is very clear that kids and youth know how to do with that, but we need support from our teachers and our adults. We are it's good it's good information that we are living more, but we are spending more. We still don't know how to deal with that. So I think I saw when you do the Menti, it's training adults. It's very important. Kids already know that. They come with this new way to think, but we are adults, and I can see here a lot of trash in our restaurants. People doesn't care. We are here at COP, and we do not take the trash up our table and put the right side. We are dealing with that. We are here at COP, and we do not are polite enough to deal with our trash. So this is important to train adults to at least find some way to finance training of adults and teachers. And I finish with that, of course. Thank you so much.
Nana, thank you so much for that. And yeah, teacher training is something that I think a lot about when you look at the reasons why climate education isn't happening. One of the main reasons is teachers saying that they don't know, or they don't think it aligns with their subject. So thank you for talking about the importance of that. And another key point of Renata's remarks was the importance of listening to the youth perspective. And Janina is up here with us and would like to share her perspective.
Hello, everyone here today. My name is Janina Guevara Flores. I come all the way from Costa Rica, and today I'm here to tell you my story and my perspective on what's concerning me most, which is my future and all of the futures of all the kids that are may not be here and may not have the voice and may not have the privilege that I have to be here, but that actually need action to happen. A little bit about my backstory. I've always had a very big passion to help others. I've always felt very passionate to make a change, to act, not even only with climate change, but with other stuff around my community that may not have the option to, help or may need that extra help. I've always been willing to do that. And I guess my climate consciousness about what was happening around my country started when it started flooding. You know, Costa Rica is a very small country and it's very dry. The dry season is very dry and we usually have a lot of sun, but it suddenly started flooding, which made no sense to us because it was something so new and so different to what we're used to that really scared me and worried me deeply because my community was unable to actually attend school, go to work, fix, you know, things that they needed to do. The streets would be damaged. And the community that I come from was, you know, heartbroken because they couldn't get their food. They couldn't go to school. They couldn't go to university. They couldn't go to work. So I guess what really brought my passion to this topic was to see the people around me feeling hurt, feeling sad, that they were actually being taken away from what they used to. And not only that, I live in a very rural, small community called Nicoya in one of the 7 provinces of Costa Rica, which is Guanacaste. And where I live, we are very humble. We have everything. We try to produce it ourselves. And it's a very traditional place to live. So now, with climate change, everything had to change for them. Now they have to change the ways of transport. The town is very small, so we're used to always walking. But now with all the flooding that's going on, we can't walk anywhere. The streets are blocked with falling trees, with just like an extreme amount of rivers just like going onto the streets, and everything stops. And this is where climate education comes from. My belief and my people's belief is that climate education from kindergarten, from home, is the most important part of the actual change. We know that we are the voice, but who's there to tell us that we actually have the right to use our voice? Today, I feel empowered by my teachers. I feel empowered by CGE, by Decarbonize. I feel empowered by my teacher from my school. But I know other kids don't feel the same way. I know they're facing their own troubles in their own countries, in their own provinces, states, and towns and cities, and they can't actually do anything about it. I feel like, as Miss Renata mentioned, I feel deeply, deeply connected with teachers connecting with the problem and actually learning about it and training about it. And not only teachers, because raising kids is a shared responsibility. It's not only the teacher's fault. It's not only kids' fault. It's not only adults' fault. It's all of our faults. And we now have to get the work done. We actually have to do what's right. So I encourage you, if you have kids that, you know, in your house, if you're older siblings, younger siblings, uncles, aunts, grandmas, whatever you have in your home or whoever lives in your community, to encourage them to learn about the problem, because it's not only my problem. I'll have a world to fix when I'm 20, when I'm 30. But now that you're here, why don't you take action? Why don't you start doing things that are right? Why don't you start working on a project for your community? And that's what I want to talk about. In my school, I feel very privileged that I have teachers that are actually trained to teach me about climate education. I have the privilege to study in a school that I actually get the real truth about how our world is, how our country is doing. And I actually have the privilege of being able to be invited to this conference today. This is why it is important to have me here and to have all of my colleagues here, because I'm speaking for a country. There's not another Costa Rican teenager here. I'm speaking for a whole country. So that's what we should focus on. We should focus on bringing the voice of other countries, of Brazilian kids, of kids from the States, kids from Mexico, from all the places that in the world. That what's their words, what's happening to them. Because what I've found out in this conference is that there's other kids like me who their problem may not be flooding, it might be droughts, it might be hurricanes, it might be, I don't know, whatever. And we united could actually create something very important and very good. And the small actions are the most important ones. For example, in my school, in my community, we practiced creating compost from the residue that we have from food waste. It's a project that we have in our school. And I bring this up today because I've realized that the system that we use is actually what all schools should be using. When kids have lunch, when they have food waste, they go and wash their own plate and they go and learn how to separate what's compostable and what's not in different trash cans. And they have to do it themselves. Nobody else is doing it for them. They have to learn what goes in what bin, and they have to learn actually how to make the compost. So I feel like it's the hand-in-hand engagement that actually get us somewhere, because they are learning that every time they eat, they have to separate their waste and they have to go and put it on the composting machine and they have to turn the machine and they have to wait and they have to, the whole process, they're involved with it. And it's not only an education thing, it's a social responsibility. It is our responsibility to do it, not only for our school, but for our world. This is not something that only affects my community, that only affects my school. It involves a whole country. So this is why I feel like it is not only important to teach people or kids or teenagers in school, it is also important to teach them from childhood, from the home. So how can we actually make parents, grandparents, uncles, aunts realize that it is a part of our upbringing, it is a part of our existence, that we actually have to fight for this? So I encourage you adults here that you actually get conscious about the problem, get it in yourselves and try to do what's best for the generations to come. Do what's best for us, do what's best for you, for your families, for your communities. I feel a deep connection with the stories that I've heard in COP, because it's interesting to see how everyone has their own problem, but how they also have a solution for it. They're also implementing things that are helping them. They're also implementing things in their communities, in their high schools. And the good thing about it, and the thing that stands out to me the most, it's youth that's doing it. I've heard all the adults talk about all the important things and, the very serious talks that we get from adults all the time. But I've seen greater and bigger actions come from teenagers, and bigger ideas come from kids. Actually, amazing things that are happening. So I encourage you all to actually get started on your action and get ready for it. So thank you very much for paying attention today.
Right, very inspiring. Thank you. Okay, so we still have a couple more parts of this session. What we were thinking about is we're going to have, now that we have that background, we have a couple rounds of questions, and maybe we could do kind of, now that we have that background, sort of more quicker answers, rapid fire answers. And then we have, we want to engage with you again as well. So we'll have another mentee. And then again, if you have any questions that you'd like to follow up on. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started with some questions. And one of the, in the session title, we talked about education as a climate solution. And one of the parts about that is skills. So having green skills. And if we think about solving the climate crisis, we know that green skills are going to be a major part of that. I don't know how many of you have seen the World Bank's new report on climate education, but it's fascinating. If you haven't seen it, you should read it. It's very long, but tons of data, including that 80% of business owners believe that green skills will be the key to the green transition. And they're saying that because they already have a lack of them. So how do we foster them for the students who are in schools today, for the workforce of tomorrow? So I'd like to start with Cinderella. Can you share some examples of how you've seen green skills developed in your work with Green Hut Trust, and maybe some of what you think are the most pressing skills?
you so much for that question. I think green skills have been very important, especially when dealing with young people, because I think there's a common misconception of how if you're a young person, you don't need money. And for the longest of time, when I started my organization right after college, making it a sustainable, a paying career for me was not a priority until I grew up and I became a mom. So I also need to make sure that in the activities that we're doing, we're also capacitating young people that also have responsibilities that need the financial muscle to be able to thrive within the green skills. So one of the priorities in green skills is particularly having green skills that directly address the endemic challenges like waste management, where we are capacitating young people on green skills that they can utilize, and recycling, and making sure that they are also greening the existing businesses in agriculture. How can they make their agricultural activities more sustainable and in touch with what's happening in Zimbabwe? We're also looking at green skills as well in terms of the entrepreneurial side, looking at, we have a project right now that we're working with a Netherlands-based institution called HIVOS, where we are looking at how young people can also have green skills across the food value chain, be it from production to the manufacturing to the packaging and to the food waste as well. So green skills have been a pathway in which we are capacitating young people financially. We're also capacitating their skills as well. I think I'll end here for the sake of time.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And of course, yeah, innovation is key and that entrepreneurial spirit. And that's also key for having a more optimistic approach for the climate crisis, which, this session's not on climate anxiety, but, we could make that connection as well. Another important part of what you talked about was teacher training. Can you talk about what you found effective in that? Do you talk to teachers about, green skills and how they can incorporate that with their students?
Well, the part of the training of teachers is that we have to have this in very high level. So we have to start to at least have conversations with our education ministers and at the states with the secretary education persons of the states. And now we have education in our NDC, but it's in a very
Broad,
very broad way. So for me, it's starting have a conversation in a high level, have in our NDCs and our base national curriculum to start to having conversations, because if there is not in the curriculum, I know that some teachers want to do these classes, want to have these conversations with their students, but the schools doesn't allow it. So we have this problem with some schools, have this problem with the legal educations that we have in states and nationally. So it's very important to have at least some laws that structure that conversations, because it's in our law, we for sure that we have this to have to train teachers. And if we have this training for teachers, we have to guarantee the space in the schools that these teachers could work with children and youth, because if not, it will not happen. So we have to have everything aligned. And we as parents have an important role in that part, because sometimes parents just only want to know about the grades. And this is important that we can ask the schools what they are doing with for climate change, for climate justice, for us anti-racism knowledge. So, and for our elders, it's important to be in a school too, because at least in Brazil, but I know that is in other countries too, we have indigenous knowledge. We have very good knowledge for ancients that could solve the climate crisis. So it's important to have everyone aligned, just one focus to solve climate crisis and climate justice. So it's like that. So we have, and of course, if everyone demands for that, we will find money for that, because money always finds the interest of society. So when society demonstrate that this is important, we will find money for that.
Thank you for that. And yeah, I really liked your point about alignment, and I was thinking about the importance of communication for that. You know, what, and especially tying back to green skills, like what are these green skills? So the research has been done identifying the capabilities that we want students to have and what the green skills are. And that leads to alignment between the schools, but it also is going to need alignment with corporations, because I was a former teacher. I don't know exactly what those green skills would be, right? That's not my area of expertise. So increasing the communication and then having training that is relevant. So thank you for that. Gina, you talked about your teachers talking about climate education and being inspiring. Can you share a specific example of something that they have shared, maybe around, you know, green skills or innovation or the future of the green economy, or something that's just really motivated you to be a part of this transition?
Well, thank you very much for your question. I have a personal story to share. My school has a teacher that her name is Francine. I wish she was here today with me, but she motivated me. She's my motivation. Like we've been talking about all these on this panel, teachers, adults are the ones that usually teach us things that makes us have a better life, that makes our lives easier. And she specifically, I'm privileged to be her student because she has taught me green skills. She has taught me things that are very important to me now, and she has made me grow conscious of what's actually important for my country, for myself, for my community. And I feel like innovative ways that she has showed me this is that she has always had this spirit of doing what's best for the community, knows what's best for others. She's very selfless and kind. And I feel like an innovative way that she actually implemented this was signing us up for the Decarbonize project. Connecting with projects, organizations, NGOs like this one specifically target a kid's, a youth's, a child's needs and also motivates them, because it is a way of actually involving children in active decision making, but making it so you actually enjoy it, right? Because we're supposed to enjoy what we do. We're supposed to love what we do. And of course, I love the earth and I love animals and nature. I come from a place that's very biodiverse. We hold 6% of the world's biodiversity. But having her introduce me to this program that aligned me with other kids made me grow to be a very big empath for everything that happens around the world. Because it's not only me. There's also Australian kids, there's also Colombians, there's also Mexicans and other people from around the world. And they have told me their own climate story, and it has inspired me. So I guess the best way that she has inspired me as my teacher is she connected me to a community that wanted to actually make a change. So I feel like teachers should give their students the opportunity to connect with other kids that think like them and who also want to actively change the world.
That's a great answer. Thank you. And I think, you know, when we talk about climate education, there's the direct reasons we talk about. We talk about, students' emotions around the climate crisis. We talk about green skills. We talk about pro-climate behaviors and how we can encourage those. But then there's the other aspects, like what Janina just talked about. I'm sure many of you in here were, inspired by a teacher at some point, right? I hope so. I hope you had that experience. And, they can be so important. And so having a climate aspect is really important for teachers that are inspirational for their students to be having those conversations. So thanks for kind of bringing it to attention, the kind of like another below the surface reason for why climate education is so important. I would like to now turn to Juan. So if it's possible to switch back to our virtual participant. And Juan, while we're talking about the green skills, we're just looking at the 4 pillars. I was curious if you could tell us how green skills incorporate into those pillars. Is there a specific pillar that is really heavily focused on green skills? And also for people who are already in the partnership or people who are interested in joining the partnership, how can they contribute to the development and implementation of green skills?
Thank you, Bryce. Indeed, as many of the other speakers have already spoken about, the greening skills and facilitating green skills through education systems require the whole of systems approach. That means that, for example, the pillar 1 on schools, including, for example, the learning environments such as the TVET institutions and others, will need to become the places where we live what we learn and learn what we live. So having that whole school approach within these learning environments and making sure that green skills not only directly related to specific job skills, but generally life skills that are needed to be climate ready and low carbon. I think this needs to be integrated into the daily lives of our schools and learning environments. Secondly, on curriculum, the core 21st century skills and competencies that support climate action, particularly this greening curriculum guidance that I mentioned earlier, has areas such as the post-carbon green economies and sustainable lifestyles, which are directly linked with green skills and jobs and preparing themselves for the future. But also, not only these immediate skill sets are important, but also the fundamental shift in the basic premise towards greening of our economic systems as a core value is critical, so that we create that enabling environment for green skills to thrive. Thirdly, for teacher training and education systems capacities, readying teachers, I don't need to repeat because our panelists on site have already elaborated so much with their direct inspiring examples, but placing also policies and budget priorities and addressing the nexus between green skills and digital skills, how they match. These things need a policy addressing and also resources to be allocated. And finally, for the greening of the communities, lifelong learning, reskilling and upskilling of all lifelong learners in communities, all citizens, and connecting them, whether in whichever jobs that they're doing, with younger learners as part of community learning process, having action-based learning in communities, that will be a critically important, not only for their own readiness to address climate change, but also to make sure that our future generations are ready for this climate era. Thank you.
Thank you, Juan. If you can keep Juan on the screen, please. Okay, or not. We'll come back. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm participate in pillar 2, the greening of the curriculum. And so I really appreciated you sharing, the other examples of how we can focus on green skills that are outside of pillar 2. And yeah, earlier I mentioned the World Bank report that was released in early September that's just filled with amazing data. And it might take a while to read both these documents, but if you were looking for a good read, you could start with the World Bank report on climate education, and then you could go, as Juan mentioned, the greening curriculum guidance. And so you'll kind of have the why and all the data to support that, and then you'll start to see the how. And so I think those would pair together pretty nicely. In the next section, just as I was kind of alluding to there, transition to, how are we going to get this done? How are we going to make progress in greening the curriculum and climate education? And I think we know that partnerships and financing are key to these. So Juan, while you're here, I wanted to ask you, the Greening Education Partnership has 1,400 organizations, 93 member countries. It's an incredible amount of partnerships. So can you tell us what, key findings you've had or skills that you've developed about managing partnerships that could guide others in that process?
Yeah, sure. So this partnership has grown in such a speed that I've never imagined back in 2022. And this is really thanks to the common understanding that of the urgency for action, that everybody realizes now that climate change is no longer a marginal topic in education world. Education is no longer a marginal topic in climate world. So we needed to take action. And for us, the recipe for good partnership is, first of all, to have a shared understanding that no one can do this alone. So breaking down silos, letting down our egos, trying to put our logo somewhere, breaking and letting go of that hold onto our own organization's visibility, and having the common understanding that we need to work together. That's the first part. Secondly, is a concrete pathway for collaboration. Even if we have a good partnership, we need to know what we will do together. And that's the common language building, the global guidances, and common target building that I've mentioned earlier. And thirdly, the sense of ownership is critical. For example, last week we had our COP celebrating the second annual meeting of the Greening Education Partnership. And there, one of the speakers mentioned this nice quote, which says that JEP is what we all want it to be. So everybody is contributing and everybody is co-creating the process together. And finally, the key recipe is also to celebrate together, be happy and be proud of our joint achievement. And we hope that for this, at COP30, we will bring the first numbers of the progress made as a global part of the global stocktake on climate education. And we hope that that could be a moment of joint celebration and also joint visioning for the next 5 years. Thank you.
That's very exciting. Thank you for sharing that. Cinderella, can you share some of your experiences with partnerships that have helped you with Green Hut Trust?
Thank you so much. So from a youth-led organization perspective, it really hasn't been easy, especially unlocking financing, because most of the funding out there or the grants out there have this eligibility criteria that is so out of reach for young people. So partnerships have been really helpful in terms of Green Hut Trust also getting some financing to be able to do the work that we're doing. Right now, I had mentioned a project that we're doing with the Netherlands-based institution called HIVOS, which is assisting us with building climate resilient food systems with young people at the forefront. So that's a project that we are running until 2027. And also partnering different institutions has also given us the ability to see things from a different point of view. Partnering with government means you're also getting to understand the gaps within the policies, and you can then be able to direct whatever interventions that you have towards that cause. Partnering with community-based organizations, the communities themselves has also assisted us in our programming to ensure that we are not just crafting solutions that at the end of the day are not in touch with what the community is facing. So partnering again with schools has also given us the leeway to also understand the education system and where there are gaps and how our organization can assist. So definitely partnership has been very critical for us in growing and in learning from the different institutions that we are working with, whether big or small, and getting a whole systems approach from the different kinds of institutions that we've partnered, from governments to international NGOs to local communities and to individuals as well, and the private sector.
Thank you, Cinderella. Yeah, I think it's such an important point to think about the relevance of it. And when you're, we want to partner with it. Everyone wants to partner with everyone, or, people all want to work together in this space. But yeah, identifying those projects that are going to be most effective on the ground. Okay, for the sake of time, I was going to ask, I still will, about the future, but I'm going to ask if maybe just in like 1 to 2 sentences, everyone, we could just go through real quick and share, what are you for your organization or for building to COP30? What are you most excited for? What are you excited about? Anna, could you start?
Well, we are going to have to hold next COP in Brazil, so I really want to see lots of negotiators that are youth and diverse. That's my plan for the future. I wish to see in the negotiation rooms people who are very diverse from every country and youth.
Thank you.
For me, what I look forward to in the future is partnerships that are going to assist organizations such as mine to unlock more financing to facilitate the work that we're doing on the ground.
And for me, I think the most important part and what I look forward to is more youth involved. I want more kids to be here. I want to have a lot more kids sitting right next to me with these big names and big companies.
All right, and Juan, if you can just give us a second to get you back on the screen.
Sure, I hope you can hear me back.
You're back. Okay, thank you.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah, for me, COP30 will be the global stocktake of 5 years since COP26 in Glasgow, where the first ministerial session on climate education took place. So we hope to see some numbers around how the schools, curriculum, teacher training, and communities are being greened in each of the countries.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to everything that you all mentioned. I'm looking forward to more panels like this that have, intergenerational aspect. And also I know that, like I was saying earlier, talking with youth for that motivation and also being in nature. And I know that there's some pretty interesting things being planned for COP30 in that regard. So it'll be nice. Before I go, I'm not sure if we have time for the mentee, but I wanted to see, does anyone in here, because we really want to engage with you, are there any questions from the audience at this? Yeah, thank you. I don't know if we have a microphone. We do have a microphone. Yeah. I was going to bring you a microphone. Just wait 1 second.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Young. I'm a teacher and also a researcher, and I run an NGO that has to do with children, youth, and women. And I must appreciate that I had the opportunity to attend this particular session. And I'm excited to see the Young Climate advocate in the I'm sorry I don't come in on time to learn about her name, but I appreciate you. And thank you. I want to find out the countries that have really signed this partnership. I am from Nigeria, and we don't have it in our curriculum. And I want to really take it home. And recently, we had signed into law, that's my country has signed into law, of demonstrating development from the grassroots, that is making the local government, the local law implementers, to fashion their own way of developing the immediate environment, not taking the one from the national government. And the national government can only supervise. And I would love to get the details of how to partner so that I can start the partnership and be able to bring in. I'm also working with the House of Assembly in my states, and passing these things into the curriculum will not be a problem because I already have a voice and a platform, and we want to partner. Thank you so much.
That's great. Thank you for those comments about the panel. We're really glad that you were able to be here with us. I'm interested to learn more about your work, so maybe we can talk after. And I can, we can also talk about joining the GEP and the ways that you can contribute from Nigeria. So thank you so much. Are there any other questions?
I have a comment which may turn into a question. My name is Pete Higgins. I work at Edinburgh University, and for many years I was Scottish Government advisor on sustainability education. And so here's part of the question, which is, why do we keep talking about climate when actually really it's about sustainability? A much, much bigger issue, a more encompassing issue. And as somebody who works with teachers, pre-service training of teachers, in-service training of teachers, and a much broader community of interest, it seems to me that we're missing a trick by not properly linking the three big agendas, which are education for sustainable development and climate, of course, global citizenship, in other words, social justice, and nature. And there's been a lot of talk about nature. In particular, a lot of my work is with nature, it's outdoors with our students. And we've done a lot of research which shows very clearly that if you spend time in nature actively educating young people, they become much more sensitized to broader sustainability issues. Now, you're nodding, I'm nodding as I'm saying it. We know this, but we've forgotten it. At least we're not making sense of it. So here's a suggestion. First of all, that we think much more broadly rather than just climate. Secondly, we try to build this into our educational practices. And thirdly, what we tell policymakers, which I've done in the past, is that the research shows if you take kids outdoors, even for a short time, they learn better. They actually do better in their classes, which is what they want to know. So I just wonder if that feels like it's a helpful intervention or not, but this notion that we actually go back to thinking about sustainability as a much broader concept. Maybe somebody'd like to respond to that. And just finally to say, Cinderella, I have a PhD student who was working on the very same sorts of things as you're doing. So I'd happily talk with you about that afterwards. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great comment. And it's something that, I'm sorry, I know I'm not a panelist, but I can't help myself with that comment. It's something that we think about a lot. And I was just at, the biodiversity COP, talking about education and biodiversity education and advocating for, aspect of including climate in that and nature. And I think in the final draft, climate did not get included. So it's kind of like, there are these silos. And so it's a mixture of like, how do we operate in that space? Because I've talked to probably 40 country delegations and if you're at the climate COP, you're going to have that conversation if you're talking about nature. But I 100% agree that we need to bring them together and we can't separate them, but these silos exist. So what do we do? Yeah. And I'd love to talk more about that later if you're interested. Okay, well, I guess we are over time. I'd like to thank the panelists for joining us, and I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to come see us today. Thank you.